And so we ask ourselves, will our actions echo across the centuries?
Alright, Longhouse, again, it's been a while. I'm here with Op4ator, again, it's been a while. How's it going?
What's up, man? It's been a minute. Yeah, dude, I swear, it was just like yesterday that we did this, and it's been a year. Yeah. Oh, it's wacky, man.
Yeah,
it's funny. It's cool. It's cool to just see how much it's grown. Like, not just your page, but like all the other like ancillary pages have kind of got like boosted.
Yeah, and a lot of it too was like fairly recently. Like everything just kind of started going a lot. I don't want to say it started blowing up, but it started kind of.
No, it's grown.
Yeah.
I mean, December was like kind of like a big fucking. Everyone had like this gradual growth, and then December, it just kind of became a craze. It literally is probably due to just those Grand Theft videos. Had it not been for those, it probably wouldn't have reached the point it did.
It was also probably too because like around the holidays, everybody stops giving a fuck at work, and then you get like a couple weeks off at the end usually for work. So I feel like a ton of people were just like on their phones fucking off at work, and they were like, "Oh, this is cool."
Or like at family gatherings. Like you're like, oh, okay, now I have to go see my family, and like some people just kind of like go, and they really don't want to be there, so they're just kind of like browsing through their phones, and they just kind of see it.
Yeah.
So I see where the growth comes during the holidays, like a lot of it, just a lot of dudes.
Yeah.
And it might eke out a bit, like this week, next week, as people have come back to work. But it's crazy. I mean, like the fact that like people give a shit about what we're calling soldiering is pretty. It's good and bad. It's good in that like a lot of these associated pages are able to get the message across to a lot bigger audience, but at the same time it's a little sobering because once everyone starts deciding like, oh yeah, I need to be a soldier from now on, it's like, yeah, like you're prepping for a war. So I think things are still in that, like, at least politically and socially, things are still in like that slow boil towards something like some sort of finality, and it just kind of feels that way. Like everyone's still kind of like, yeah, I need a, it's cool that I can conceal carry and I love it, but I also need an AR and I also need a ruck because shit might get so bad that I need to like ruck my way from point A to point B to kind of get away from whatever it may be. So
yeah,
it's pretty.
Yeah, I would say that it was like a natural progression almost. Like if you look at the gun or like the gun community, so to speak, through the years. I hate using that term because I honestly don't see it as like a community because everybody just fucking eats each other alive in it. Like, oh, you like this, but I like this. Like, that's it.
Yeah,
we're not friends. Yeah, you can get fucked. That's like you were joking about earlier. Like everybody's talking about Reki, and you just bought an 11.5 upper, like CBD time.
Yeah, I've gone completely against form. It's funny too because I've always had like a 16-inch upper. Like if you go back in my Instagram, way back, it was like it's always just been the same AR. I still have it. It's fine. I have no problem. Like, it's still my go-to. It's just I kind of like looked at it and I'm like, you know what, man? It'd be kind of cool to have like another AR.
It would be cool if I had this gun but short.
Yeah, it's kind of cool.
Yeah.
And also, I think the other thing too is I kind of miss because that upper is so like, to me it's just final. Like I wouldn't change anything significant on it except like upgrading like optics. Like, but it'd be going from one LPVO to another. It wouldn't be like, oh, I'm going to EOTech, I'm going to something else. It would just say LPVO. So I kind of feel like I missed out on like a lot of like testing and trial. So I kind of bought this upper to be like, oh well, I'm gonna do with this upper what I didn't do with the other upper. So
yeah,
it's just kind of like funny.
Well, because that's the thing is that like, I'm sure that you've seen that video that that 9-Hole Reviews did a while ago where they shot out to like 500 with a 10.5 AR pistol, and like it'll do it. I don't know like what the killing power is at 500, but I know for a fact that like 14.5 will kill at 500 meters. So like,
yeah,
realistically, the thing too that I was kind of getting on with one of my buddies, because he was talking about he sold like a 16-inch upper, and because it wasn't very good, and he was gonna upgrade it, and he was talking to me about getting like a 20-inch, and I was like, okay, what's your reasoning behind it, like just out of curiosity. And it started with, well, I want to be able to like fuck up plates, and I was like, it's not gonna do that. Like your expected outcome is not gonna, that's not it. Like level 4 plates probably are gonna be fine for the majority of things, because they're tested for like 30-06 armor piercing. Like that has a lot more power.
Yeah.
5.56, especially.
And you know, any ceramic plate at that level is probably gonna be multi-hit rated as well.
Yeah, exactly.
So like I don't, at this point, if you, at least in my opinion, if you want to go with a longer barrel, it's just because you fucking like it, or like you just have the wingspan for it.
And that was the thing,
like,
was that he originally said that, and I was like, that's not gonna happen. I kind of like gave him shit for it, and he goes, I just like the look of it. I was like, you should have just said that from the beginning. He's like, I thought you would have made fun of me. I was like, no, I'm making fun of you for making up like weird things that aren't real. And
yeah, it's kind of just like, it's just like, oh, I just like how this looks. It looks cool. And it's like, oh,
yeah. And that's
all
the
right.
thing. The realistic thing too is that you can clear buildings with 20-inch barrels, and you can shoot out past 300 with a short barrel. Like you can do both things with like modern ammo and modern techniques and all that stuff. And I know that this is like not a good metric to go by, but I'm still gonna say it, that like Marines were in Fallujah clearing buildings with fucking M16A4s and like iron sights.
Yeah.
So you can definitely do it. It's not optimal.
I mean,
like,
and then you flip. Well, I mean, you flip that script too, and like look at how many like Green Berets, fucking Rangers, SEALs, whatever, are using like short 11.5s, 10.3s, you know.
Yeah.
In Afghanistan, and it's like, oh, you're in the mountains, you're in Afghanistan. What aren't you worried about shooting for? And it's just like, I'm not doing that mission, you know.
Yeah.
Like,
well, yeah.
And even if they need it, here's the beauty of it, is there's nothing limiting you to one rifle either, or one upper. Like,
especially because
like, I mean,
most people's plans involve like a vehicle. Like you can store thousands of guns in a fucking truck.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, even if you had to live out of Iraq, if you really deemed it important enough that you had like an SPR style upper, or like you have like some 20-inch barrel with like a night force, a fucking can, you could just lash that upper to your pack.
Mm-hmm.
And you're not carrying an extra gun. You'll just carry like, let's say all of your 20-round mags are like 77 grain OTM or some shit. The optics zeroed for it in those temperatures.
Yeah.
But then when you're patrolling, you're just carrying like an 11.5 or a 14.5. You're just kind of like, with just like a red dot and like, just ball ammo.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, back to what I was saying before though, is with like the gun community and like soldiering and stuff, is that like it's been a steady progression, because I remember like in the early YouTube gun days, like 2000, probably 7 or 8, that was like when Nut and Fancy was in his fucking prime, because he was the only guy that did it. And
yeah,
he would like go out in the desert and put on his whole kit and like go do little courses that they'd set up. And I remember like, because my dad used to watch Nut and Fancy videos, and he'd be like, yeah, like that looks so cool, but I can't really see like a realistic like way to do that stuff, right? And
yeah,
especially for us, because we don't live in the desert, we live in fucking a different part. But and then like, he never was really one to like get into ARs or anything like that. He ended up getting one like after I had a couple, and he kind of started to see the need for it. But
yeah,
like the gun community-ish mindset in like early 2000s was just like, it was still like in the hunting mode, right? It was very little on the defense. And like, yeah, you can still find those 1980s videos where dudes are wearing like super short shorts shooting fucking fully auto MP5s, but there was like the outlier. Yeah. And then
you're not gonna find them unless you're heavily looking for them. And even then, it's not like I don't want to say curated, but it's kind of like, because there was a lot of interest in like, let's say Rhodesia or like mercenaries in the Congo or something, you got videos on that. Like people would dig them up somewhere, or like they had them and they would post them, or they got publicized, and that's how you really found them. But if there was no interest for it, they'd have like 100 likes, and you would have never like you would have had to have searched the exact title, or like had to have had a link, and that's kind of how it would have played out.
Yeah, and the thing too that's weird is that, like, not weird, but I guess it just kind of naturally happened, is like the gun community went from like hunting with like the occasional like nut and fancy kind of guy to everything had to be like concealed carry, gray man, like, oh, I want to carry a bunch of guns and a bunch of shit, but I don't want anybody to know. And then that slowly ended up turning into like, well, at this point, if I'm carrying a gun like overtly, I might as well carry all my other gear, because everybody knows that I'm fucking packing a gun if I'm carrying an AR through the streets. And then that just started turning into like overt gear. And then now we're seeing like a shift where everybody's like, you know what, maybe the cities aren't a good idea, and then they're like watching Grantham Recce videos. Yeah. Which,
no, for
also,
sure. I mean,
by the way, important point, Recce has nothing to do with your rifle.
If you haven't been on Instagram in the past 3 weeks and haven't had that horse like murdered in front of you and just mutilated, like,
till it turns to fucking glue.
Yeah, like yet again, it is it's a task. It's something you do. You do it with a belt fed. You do it with if you have to, you do it with a bolt gun. You do it with a short AR. You do it with a long AR. It doesn't really fucking matter.
You do it in your car with a fucking pistol tucked in your belt. Like,
you do it with no weapon. Just your fists.
I've literally done like urban reconnaissance in the city with nothing but a handgun and like no kit. I had a bag with some rope in it, because the way to get, it was like a fucking desecrated like abandoned building that was like it was super tall, and it overlooks like 3 highways that merge together. And
keep telling everyone that rope was for climbing.
Yeah, in homeless people. No, but I had like a rope and like a couple other small things, and a lot of it too was just because the guy that I was with like does like a lot of photography stuff, so we had some photography type gear, so that way if like for some reason anybody found us that was like, hey, what the fuck are you doing here, we can just be like, oh, we're photographers. So a lot of it was just like decoy gear. And we went through it, and we went like all in this building and like checked out different points and like awesome spots to like oversee like really high traffic areas, all this stuff. We didn't have a single piece of fucking gear except for like our handguns that I carry to go out to take out the trash, you know?
Yeah. Well, funny enough, speaking about camera gear and about having gear in like an urban environment, I mean, like, this is where the short guns, the PDWs, the fucking like handguns and spare mags really shine. I mean, like, even you could even bring a long gun, camera tripod bags, if you don't mind splitting up your upper. And like you don't have like a very bulky, like if you don't mind like splitting your upper and lower and you don't have a bulky rifle, you can easily fit your gun in like a bag that says like Kodak or Canon or like tripod system, you know, like something very innocuous. And like you carry that, you carry one of those little backpack knapsacks with a DSLR, and like you tuck in like a shooting bag somewhere in there, like one of those little like sacks, and you have a way to kind of like clandestinely be like, oh yeah, I'm just an urban explorer photographer.
Yeah. And
I just photograph graffiti, and then sure enough, you're in like the 3rd story. You sleep there for like 12 hours. Everyone forgets you're there. Fucking set up a sniper hide.
Yeah. Yeah. And the thing too is that like with all that stuff, and this still kind of like works in the reconnaissance type thing, where, and I will go ahead and say that this is kind of like I guess like a gray man type tactic too. The thing with like the whole gray man thing is that like it's just another tactic that you can use in the right time. So in this time, just portraying yourself as a fucking photographer is technically gray man, because everybody thinks like, oh, that guy's just taking pictures, it's fine, and they don't even like remember it really. But if you get stuff that like actively detracts attention away from guns, that's going to be better than like something that is very up for interpretation. So like an example of that would be when I got my 12.5 and I set it up, I was like, okay, I need a way to carry this in like a very, you know, low profile way. And a bunch of people were recommending me like dedicated gun bags that are just quote unquote low profile, meaning that they don't have Molly, but they still have like Velcro spots for a fucking patch. They still look like there could be something in there. And then some people are like, oh, you can get this backpack. And I'm like, I don't want a backpack because it still is like, oh, there might be something interesting in there. I ended up getting a tennis racket bag, and I can fit my whole rifle in there. I can fit spare mags in the side pocket that are designed for you to put like your phone and like deodorant and shit in. And like the other day I had to make a deposit of like a large amount of money after work, because I sold a bunch of shit for cash. And so I had like a bunch of money in the side of this tennis racket bag with my gun in it and like spare mags, and I threw it in the back of my car because I work in like a not so great area. And I was like, dude, if somebody broke into my car and was like, oh, I want a tennis racket, and they took it, they would be like very surprised that it's not a tennis racket.
Yeah. But yeah, tennis racket bags. The trick with those is, as shitty as it is to kind of like tell companies like, hey, like your product is ultimately antithetical to what you're trying to accomplish. Everyone, here's the problem. If you're trying to be like low profile in an urban environment, or like even hiking, if you're just trying to like not give the vibe that you're like, because I'll go hike with a multicam backpack. I don't give a fuck. Mm-hmm. And like no one's ever said anything, but I also try to like go and like no one's out there. But in the event that someone saw me, like, okay, cool, it's a surplus bag, whatever. But it still gives that idea of military. But you know, like let's say some companies make tennis racket bags, or they'll make like violin cases or whatever, and you look at it and it'll have like a company's logo like stylistically on it, or it'll be in like a very exact colorway. And I'm gonna be real with you. The problem with that is that like you're always gonna be visible to someone who's interested in that, because they're just gonna, you know, oh, you have a Vertex bag? Like, cool. I know that Vertex makes that exact bag. So unless you're going to the esoteric company, you're just better off kind of like just buy a regular normie bag.
Yeah.
And like either modify it or just like use that. Like you're better off with like a red and yellow like tennis racket bag than you are with like, I don't even know what companies, but let's say 511 made a tennis racket bag to hide your guns. Like it's always going to be anyone who's like shopped on 511's website or like at a store or something. They might like recognize that. That being said, it's a very small minority, and like will they even care? It's like the perennial problem with printing. The only people who care about printing are those who are concealed carrying, and no one else notices it.
Yep.
So it might just be that issue too. Like who knows?
I'll add to that though, is that these companies, at the end of the day, their goal is to get as much business as they can. So a lot of these companies too are going to start making stuff that can appeal to like the normies that are still like, that are like on the cusp of kind of our side, where like they're like, oh yeah, guns are cool, I like to shoot them, you know, I go to the range in my land on the weekends and I shoot. I don't have any gear, but I just saw this sweet ad with like Tim Kennedy and like 6 ropes hanging off of his belt, like jumping over a fucking car hood. Those pants look cool. And then they start like going down the rabbit hole of like, okay, 511, and then they realize that, you know, 511 is shit, and they start going down like these rabbit holes. But at a certain point, like they're gonna be cool with all this stuff, you know. So there is the aspect where like normies are gonna start latching on that, because a lot of that stuff is kind of trendy too. Like all the time at work, like I'll see people that have nothing to do with like the military, like any of this stuff. Like they don't know what like Instagram gun world is like, and they'll have like camouflage fanny packs because it's trendy. So that's the other like benefit too, is that if you get camouflages that are, you know, like you said, you have a multicam bag, anybody knows that multicam is like a surplus thing. Like it's very apparent, right? Like same thing with M81. Like if you wanted ascended recce move is just dress up like a homeless person in M81 with like a giant Carhartt jacket and push his shopping cart around, and that's how you do your recon.
I mean it is though. That's like the OG John Clark tactic too. It was like just dress like a homeless dude, dirty up your clothes, and get like a smock with like pockets on the inside. Not even like a smock, because now everyone's gonna go buy like an Arctis smock and sit on the fucking corner of the road, and it's just gonna be like, nah, dude, you're that's a brand new fucking Arctis smock. That shit's like $400 or $500. Like, don't even play.
You gotta go leave it outside and like cut a couple holes in it.
Yeah, you have to go like just go to Goodwill, just buy a fucking jacket
Mhm.
and get like a sewing machine and just sew pockets on the inside out of like rags.
I wonder.
But
I wonder if you did something
what was
like
the
that.
book called?
If you did something like that and you took like a fishing vest, turned it inside out, and then sewed it into the inside of a jacket, I wonder if I'm going somewhere with that. Probably not.
It's just gonna be hot. I'm sure if you did something like that, it wouldn't work where I live. But I mean, dude, homeless people wear like fucking like UCP pants and shit.
Yeah.
They'll wear whatever they get. So like your ass could still have like regular cargo pants, like just ugly, like random camo or like just do surplus shit. And people wouldn't really bat an eye, and it turns out you have like a suppressed Glock 34 in there and a pair of binoculars.
633 round mags.
Yeah, like you're actually. I mean, I think the SAS did some shit like that recently, where like they would just pose as homeless people, and they would just kind of like the dude. I think Ed's Manifesto talked about that too. He said they did that in Mexico. Like you would just kind of be like an ambling drunk, and like no one noticed. Because you were such background noise, no one would kind of like pay you any mind. And really, you're sitting there with like a micro camera, like in your button, just filming everyone that walks by.
I'm gonna start like trying to blend in with my city's homeless people and just be like have so many guns and shit on me and just be like babbling like crazy and just go up to random people, ask them for $1 and a cigarette, and tell them that I taught Michael Jackson how to moonwalk, and like just start yelling. And that's the most ascended gray man that you can be. The average
neat Discord user.
And actually, you know what? The
most powerful the most powerful race to just be like thrown into like an urban war zone. Just kind of like amble around.
I feel like the real meta is like, don't go gray man. Don't be like where people don't notice you. Be where people notice you and want you to be not around them because they think that you're actually mentally unstable and like on crack.
I think that's the meta. I think you're right.
Because people spend less time around you to study your shit and be like, oh, that looks like a gun barrel like sticking out of your fucking vest. Like, nah, I'm just homeless. That's my fucking crack pipe.
Yeah, your sniper hide in the abandoned building, just like shit at all the entrances so no one wants to go in. And they have no idea you have like an XM 2010 with like a fucking suppressor and a Night Force scope on a table inside that room.
Like 6 Mark 13s on tripods in every other window.
Yeah, you've got like a vector laser rangefinder. Like you could literally buy yourself a fucking like a van to live in, and you're like, nah, dog, I spent all my money on laser rangefinders and sniper rifles.
Why would I buy a van to live in when I conveniently took the shopping cart from the local grocery store?
I'm just imagining a homeless dude like just pushing around a cart, and you just got like some like spray painted monstrosity of a sniper rifle that just does not fit, sticking out of the front, like suppressor and everything. And it's just covered like lazily by like a blue tarp.
He's just like talking to himself. Have you ever seen that video where that crackhead uses a bicycle helmet and he rubs his thumb on it and he lights his cigarette with his thumb?
What?
I'm gonna find this video, and yeah, as soon as I look up this video, everything's probably gonna shit out because my internet connection right now is like not even 1 megabyte per second.
Yeah, you know what? Just send it to me later.
Okay,
I'll just look at it later.
Actually,
but it's funny. It's funny. We came in here like kind of like with the idea like, oh, we're gonna talk about soldiering. We're gonna talk about the Ranger Handbook. And here we are, like, nah, dog. If you really want to learn how to fight, just learn how to be homeless. No one's gonna pay attention to you, and they're gonna feel sorry for you. And then when they get close, you just like your target happens to be with them, and you're just like, oh, I got you now, bitch, and you just blast them with fucking hollow points from point blank. Like, dude, a homeless dude with an MP5K is probably the most dangerous thing on earth.
That is the apex predator. Yeah.
I do not want to look. Go to everyone listening to this. There's a book by Tom Clancy called Without Remorse. You go buy that, read it front to back, and then come back and listen to this podcast. It'll all make sense.
I remember.
It turns out.
Go on.
it just turns out that the urban recce is just being homeless. Like, no one gives a fuck about you, and then you can just get close to anyone you want to kill.
It really unironically is. Like, the urban recce is, like, either look like the most harmless person, like, go dress up like the most, like, the worst looking hipster possible.
John Soy Boy.
Yeah, literally, like, wear a shirt that openly says, like, I'm vaccinated, like wear a fat suit under it too, so you look like you just have, like, a super soft, shitty, like, programmer's body, and go walk around and just like get into your fucking Toyota Corolla with, like, a bunch of Funko Pops velcroed to the fucking dashboard. That's your recce vehicle. Like, fuck the Toyota Tacoma with, like, a 40-inch lift and, like, monster truck tires, like, and fucking up-armored cab. Like, you need a Toyota Corolla with Funko Pops.
Go get in your rental Toyota Yaris. drive to the nearest gas station and get some magnets that just say, like, I love the environment. I fuck my dog, you know, shit like that. Just put it all around it, and then you can just drive around with impunity anywhere you want.
Yeah, and I'm gonna be completely honest. Like, part of the reason why, and so I didn't have this mindset when I got it, but it became, like, a very secondary, like, good thing. Is part of the reason why when I got a car, I fucking bought a Subaru is because nobody's gonna expect a guy driving a Subaru to have, like, multiple thousands of dollars worth of guns and gear in their car. Like, I got pulled over one time by a state trooper out in, like, the backwoods because I was driving way faster than the speed limit was, because I, like, on the eastern side of this part of the state, it's all, like, 65, and then on the western side it's 55, like, up in this region. And I thought that it was 65 still, and I was going, like, 75, and a state trooper got me, comes up, and me and some friends were leaving from, like, a backpacking trip, and we had brought a whole bunch of guns because we were planning on shooting on the way back. And this guy, he's like, oh, you know, whatever. And because my state is, like, a duty to inform state, like, I have to tell a cop if I'm concealed, like, I have to give him my CPL and tell him that I'm concealed carrying or I'm not. And so I give it to him. I'm like, yeah, I have my gun on me. He's like, oh, like, what do you have? And I was like, oh, at the time I had, like, a Glock 19. I was like, I got a Glock 19 on my belt. And he's like, oh, do you have any more guns? I was like, yeah, we got a whole bunch in the back. And he just kind of laughed, and he's like, you never expect to pull over a fucking Subaru and hear that there's a whole bunch of guns in the back. And he just kind of, like, laughed and walked away, and then came back and he's like, here's your ticket. I was like, you fuck. You still give me a ticket? I'm the one with more guns.
Yeah, right. Funny story about that. No, you know what? It's better if I don't tell the story. You know what? It's probably better. Just
you can tell.
Just make. It's just gonna take a while, and it wasn't even about me. Although there was one where I was involved. It would just take a while. But
dude, that reminds me.
Long story short, if you are ever gonna be in, like, it turns out if you just show up in force, like, people kind of, even the law enforcement kind of don't want to fuck with you.
Yeah.
Like, who wants to be the dude to try and arrest an entire, like, armed platoon? Like, I mean, let's be real. No, it wasn't. I just made up the platoon part. That's not part of the story. But I mean, like, let's be real. If you're, like, a fish and game cop and you rolled up on like, literally, like, 30 dudes all dressed the same with tactical gear, ARs, AKs, fucking, like, camouflage paint on. Like, dog, what are you gonna call for backup? Why? So, like, the only other guy in your county can drive over there? No, you're just gonna leave it alone.
Mm-hmm.
You guys need to stay here. Like, dog, these dudes are deciding your fate right now. All it takes is one of them to just be like, I don't think I'm going anywhere.
It's not worth $27 an hour to just get fucking 8,000
yeeted and, like, buried by just get buried by, like, 30 dudes.
Yeah.
Obviously, this isn't me giving anyone advice, and this definitely isn't legal advice. But there's a certain point where you're just, like, way too big to, like, arrest.
Mm-hmm.
They'll just arrest you when you get home. The dude will just take pictures and be like, contact his FBI office, and, you know, they'll get you when you're shopping with your kids. But at least while you're out there, no one's gonna touch you.
That's a good point, because I hadn't even thought about this too, because the last trip that we went on, it was, like, during peak hunting season, and we were like, okay, we're only gonna go like leave our camp and go do stuff like training stuff at night because we don't want to get shot by some old guy with shitty vision and a 30-06. And I wore plates like almost the whole time too, because I was like, I'm not gonna get shot by some random boomer. Anyway, so we were planning a route, and we were doing our route planning, and we were gonna like the objective was this really big. It almost looked like a kind of like a compound. Like there was like a really big cabin with like a couple outbuildings, like it backed up to a little pond, and we were gonna go do some observation and see like what the activity is there, all that stuff. And so we were looking at the maps, and there was a lot of area around it where it was private. And I was like, well, because there was a really, really, really good observation spot like across the road, and it was like this big opening. It was like a big like gravel pit with like a giant hill, and I was like, that would be fucking perfect. Like the sight line into that area is amazing from that spot, and it was private. And I was like, well, let's just not get caught, kind of thing. And
yeah.
And somebody was like, well, it's actually a really bad idea to do that, because a lot of these people that have this amount of land, they have a lot of trail cams. And yeah, even though our faces are covered and stuff, like it's, if anybody slips up or if anybody fucks up or if anybody has any sort of identifiable thing, there's like apparently groups on Facebook that are literally like counter trespassers, where like people will be like, oh, I'm in this region. Yeah, they'll be like, oh, I'm in this region. Here's pictures of guys that were on my land. Does anybody like know who these are? And they'll like figure out, and they'll fucking report people for trespassing off of like game cameras.
Yeah, no, go ahead and report the 30 fucking dudes in full kit. Go ahead. Like, all I'm saying is this, man. There's this, and you see this in any sort of like, especially, you know, third world countries where like shit really goes down. Go ahead. Like in the 80s in Colombia, go ahead. Go report that Pablo Escobar was taking a shit in your front lawn because he got drunk. Go ahead. See what happens. You know, it's like shit like that. Like, do you really want to bark up that tree? Obviously, I'm not advocating for like, oh yeah, go kill your fucking like neighbors that you're trespassing on. But I'm just saying, like, if things start
it's
getting
the implication.
Yeah, it's just like let's be real, man. Like, you always have that trump card. If you have like 30 motherfuckers with you with guns, it's like, well, I could just not listen to you, and we could just win this fight right here and right then and there. Yeah, we have like second, third order problems at that point, but I mean, at least this immediate problem's been wiped out. Like you really don't know if you're that cop responding to it. You really don't know if these dudes just decide like, I'm not going with you. And like, I don't know. I think more people need to think about it. Everyone thinks that it's main character syndrome, and I think like cops. I mean, no, I know like cops can have it too. Anyone can have it. I mean, I probably have it. You probably have it. That being said, I am the main character, so this is all about me.
Yeah, me too.
But yeah, so no, it's just like, dude, you're really gonna arrest 30 dudes? Like, if they don't want to go with you, you really can't do anything about it. Mm-hmm. You can call for backup, but if you're out in like, if you're like, you know, miles from the fucking nearest like cop, like, yeah, you can call for backup all you want, dog. You do anything wrong, and you might not make it out of there. Well, it's just, it is what it is.
Like recently, so I met up with Buddy, and because we were I was getting a gun from him.
Yeah.
So we go to the spot, and we meet up at this place. It was like a Denny's, like gas station parking lot, and we're sitting there eating, and all like a couple of trucks from Department of Homeland Security from like fucking New York pull up, and I was joking around. I was like, "Are those your friends like coming to pick me up?" And so we were gonna do this gun swap. And I was like, you know what? This probably isn't the best place to do it, because this is an extremely crowded parking lot, and there's a fuck ton of like DHS trailers like around. There's like I think 2 or 3 trailers, like a clear like communications truck. They're probably driving to go do some sort of training, and they're not in their jurisdiction. Yeah. But I was like, I'm not even gonna like deal with that headache of having to like talk my way out of it. And,
yeah.
So we're like, okay, let's go drive. We'll go down the side road, and we'll do it there. So we're driving, I find this little side road, we're driving down it. I'm trying to find just like a good spot to pull off, because we're like in the mountains. And
yeah,
I find this like clearing on this corner, and there's this fucking like big plot with like a house that's being built. And I'm like, all right, this is a good spot. There's nobody around. Like, it's the weekend. Nobody's gonna be here. We pull up on the side of the road, do our thing, and then this car like comes down the driveway by us and like turns, and the guy's talking to us, and he's like, hey, what are you guys doing? This is my land. And I'm like, oh, sorry, we were just doing like a, you know, a trade. It's all good, like, we're leaving now, sorry. And he's like, oh, it seems kind of sketchy. And I'm like, dude, there's nothing illegal about what we're doing. Like, I promise, we're leaving now. Like, we didn't have any sort of malicious intent. And he's like, okay. And I turn around, he turns around, and we drive, and this car is fucking following us. And
yeah,
I'm like, all right, this guy's following us for sure. And he's like right behind Buddy. And so we go to turn onto the main road, and Buddy like waits a second for this truck to get kind of close, and he like pulls out kind of quick, and the guy's like right on his tail, like cuts off this truck to like no fucking end. And he follows us. We drive back to the park, like the gas station where we're at, and we pull up because he's got to get gas before we go our separate ways. And this guy comes up to us like pissed, and he's like, what are you guys doing? Are you guys like shooting on my land? All this stuff. We're like, no, we're not shooting on your land. Like, did you hear any gunshots? And this guy was like getting irate, knowing that we both had guns. And we're like, what the, like, why are you following us? And we told him, and we were like, no, it's fine. And the guy was like, well, you're on my land. And we're like, no, the road is not your land. Like, that's it.
Yeah.
Like, we were on the road, and we gave him some shit, and we played our cards right, and the guy was like, all right, like, drive safe. And he like left us alone. But I'm like, why the fuck would you follow two guys that you don't know, that
you know are armed?
Yeah, you know have guns. Like, what's going on? What's going on, big guy?
Bro, I don't know, man. It's like you see those videos that have come out in like the past 2 years where like people will get into these altercations, and like someone will produce a gun and they'll just be like, oh, no balls, you won't shoot me. And then the dude bodies them. It's like, what'd you think was going to happen?
Movies, like, it's such
it is main character syndrome. It's like, oh, I can just get shot and I'll be fine.
Yeah, I'm just going to revive.
And then, then your heart explodes from a fucking FMJ barreling through it, and you spend your last moments getting paraded. You know, this dude just like stepping over you, like staring at you as you die, and it's like, oh, I guess like, it doesn't work that way.
I thought he was homeless.
Yeah. Oops.
But
no,
yeah.
it's nuts to me. I mean, people really do want to, like, I don't know, just if you are going to go out and train in full kit and shit, like, just understand that you're going to have dudes that aren't going to give a fuck that you're in full kit. They're still going to try and like pull a one-side. And I'm telling you, this is not like this is not a call to just like shoot them and bury them. Although if you do that, you know, I can't stop you. But what I'm going to say is this: just understand that dudes get fucking nutters sometimes when they see something like that, and they're like, oh, well, I'm gonna stop it. This is my John McClane moment. And like, just, I guess, like, just use your better judgment and like just kind of see, like, okay, obviously if the guy starts becoming dangerous, like he starts like threatening you, like, you know, go through whatever your escalation of force protocol is and go with whatever your morals tell you to do. But I mean, like dude, that's wild. I would have never, dude, I think it's because of where I live. Like, I live like right really close to Miami, so like, dude, you follow someone, like you're kind of starting in motion of chain of events that usually lead with someone getting shot.
Yeah,
like they're not. People here, by and large, like are a little bit more wary because, like, dog, like Florida's very loose with their guns. Like they'll fucking, you know, it is not that difficult to get a concealed carry permit, or just even permitless carry. Like, you just don't care about the law.
Yeah.
There's a lot of motherfuckers like that.
Yeah, and I don't know. It's one of those things where, like, yeah, it's probably main character syndrome, or like like, this is my duty to do this. Nothing bad is gonna happen to me. But
yeah, and it's like,
it's crazy.
It's crazy.
I mean, the main thing to like gather from all this too is, like, if you're in the woods, if you're doing everything legal, like for us, we largely train on public land, and we will, like, our one of our main shooting spots is like right by this, it's like this 2-track dirt road that's fairly well traveled. I mean, if no cars pass between, you know, 3 hours, it's not weird, but if like 6 cars pass, it's also not weird.
Yeah.
And so like people will pass by us and we will be doing like full gun drills, like shooting stuff and everything, like in full kit. Nobody really cares. Because it's like in the backwoods. And like,
Yeah.
there was one time where me and a buddy were doing like camouflage testing off on like this little part of the woods, like on the side of this range area. And it's like a publicly known shooting spot because it's like a big field with a giant berm on the back. And every time you go there, there's like shells on the ground, and like sometimes people leave their shit behind that they were shooting at, like a fucking door or something. And so we're like doing this stuff off on the side, like very clearly concealed, like our cars are there. And these two guys pull up and they get out and they're like unloading guns. They kind of look at our cars, like look around. I'm like, these guys definitely don't see us. So we get out, literally full kit, head to toe, in camouflage, like everything. We go, like we wave to them, we're talking to them, we're like taking our stuff off. And we're just like casually talking to them, and they like literally, it was as if we were just like plain clothes. Like they could not give less of a fuck.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that's a good indication of the culture. It's like everyone's kind of aware in the gun world. Like once you kind of start like researching the shit, you're kind of aware. Okay, there's dudes out there that are like that, just like they just go into the woods with full kit and train, like. It's just a thing. Yeah. It's just a thing that people do. So like, you come across them, they're probably not there to hurt you. They're probably just there trying to do their own thing.
Yeah, and that's kind of what I was like getting at before, but I kept like going off on something else. Was that the progression of like the gun culture is it went from like people watching Nut and Fancy going that's weird to like LARPing as like a better Nut and Fancy.
Yeah.
Nut and Fancy is the glue that holds everything together.
Yeah, somehow.
Yeah, but I mean, it went from like the concealed carry thing, like everybody's got to wear like plaid and fucking concealed carry their Roland specials, to like, oh, I need full kit and like I need to be super deadly in the backwoods. And I think that like the more that people normalize this stuff, even though I hate that term because like it is normal, like if you look through history, I mean, I think that it was Marauder that did like a pretty good post recently about like why you shouldn't worry about if people think that you have a gun. Like it's,
yeah, I mean,
I see that it's just different tools, you know.
It is, but to kind of add on that, I'm just gonna be honest with you, dude. Like 90%, at least in the city, I've noticed 90% of the people around you just do not compute. Like they just can't like process the idea that someone will be carrying a gun. Oh, I know. Unless they're in that world, like they're really not gonna like that synapse doesn't fire in their brain. Well, where they're like, oh, this dude's wearing a camouflage smock. Like they just look at it as like hype beast fashion. Mm-hmm. Like it's not. They're expecting a Supreme logo on the tag. They're not expecting, they're not expecting it to say Arctis and there to be a pocket for like a mesh like balaclava and shit like that. Yeah, and that's the other thing too, is that like, so when I first started doing all this thing, like getting into guns and gear and all that stuff, I was like largely alone in this. Like I didn't have friends that I was doing this with. I didn't have people like influencing me. I was just kind of like figuring it out as I went along, and I was like super concerned with like, okay, I need to find, like, I would like fell into the gray man idea where I'm like, I don't want people to know that I have a gun. Like, I don't want to make people uncomfortable. Like, I'm hiking off in the woods. Like, I want something that's like has the same functionality, but is like not gonna like gain negative attention. So like, instead of getting a combat shirt, I got like this like LL Bean like wicking thing that was green and stuff like that. Yeah. So, but I was like, I remember too, because like at the time I would use Reddit, say what you want, but I like posted on something. I was like, it was like some like backpacking thing or something, and I was like, what do people think about those that are like wearing camouflage in the woods? And the biggest question, or the biggest answer, is just people were like, well, what happens if you get lost? How are you going to be found? That's why I don't. And a lot of people were like, it doesn't really matter. Like a couple people were like, oh, if I see somebody wearing camouflage, I'm going to assume that they're like crazy. And you're just going to get that. But like, there was a story that was, I had read somewhere, it might have been on like one of the posts or something, but somebody was saying that they live in Alaska, and obviously like Alaska is a very like red state, and it's very
you know,
Yeah.
a lot of people have guns and shit because there's, you know, whatever. So somebody was saying that they were like in some store, some like shop or something with their friend, and their friend was saying that like, oh, you know what, I don't ever like notice people carrying a gun. And the guy literally pointed out 3 people that were open carrying like within their vicinity in the store, and like their friend had no idea because they're not
looking for it.
Yeah, like that's the thing too, like you had said before about like printing, is like I don't give a fuck about printing because nobody's gonna know. Like nobody's gonna look at that and say, oh, that's a gun. And if somebody even like, if I happen to be somewhere and like I start talking to somebody and they point it out, which is the most far-fetched idea I can think of, you know what I'm gonna say? Oh, that's my colostomy bag. You want to see it?
You wanna take a whiff?
You want to look at my poop, son?
Yeah, just kind of like call them out, just make it disgusting.
Yeah, be like, oh, that's my colostomy bag. Thanks for fucking reminding me.
But that's kind of why I kind of stopped caring about like. So I used to hike, and I still do. If I'm hiking out with gear to like take photos or like just get some exercise, I try to pack it away so it's not seen.
Mm-hmm.
And like it's not really gray man because I have a big ass like Crossfire in multicam or like a Mystery Ranch 3DAP in multicam, and I have like a bag with me. So like anyone who's like thinking, or like any one of us would probably see that and be like, oh, that dude's got a gun in there. But I hike in my gun and gear inside of a pack. But lately I've been taking, like before I used to conceal carry, until like one day I was just carrying like, I was like using the Crossfire ruck, and I'm like, I'm using the waist belt because I'm going kind of far. And I just kind of realized, I'm like, oh dude, this is not going to jive well with concealed carrying. So I bought a Safari Land, and I just started OWB carrying while I'm like hiking. Like I just don't care. And if someone comes across me, there's like 1.5 million ways. This is Florida. I can just be like, dog, like I saw like a fucking python in the woods, and like if there's someone who's familiar with like big snakes or like any animal that is scary but might really not be, like they'll just be like, if it's anyone familiar, they'll be like, I don't care. But if it is someone that isn't familiar, they're just gonna be like, oh no, the big spooky snake, oh no. And so like I will get 0 questions.
Yeah, and I mean that's the thing. Like usually if I go out hiking, I'll like outside the waistband carry, and usually like if I have like a Helicon anorak that's cut pretty loosely, or like, you know, whatever clothes or whatever, I can just kind of throw the shirt over it, and like you won't notice. Like if I'm walking and there's some guy jogging on the trail before I make off into the woods, like I'll just kind of lazily cover my gun with my shirt, and I don't worry about it.
Yeah, it's just kind of like easy. I mean, I don't even bother anymore.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not gonna sit there for like 20 minutes before I leave, and I'm like, how am I gonna conceal this gun? Because I'm carrying the gun I carry every day of my life, and I'm just gonna stick it on my belt and toss my shirt over it, so it's not as obvious. And I mean, it's a black holster. I'm like, you're not gonna notice it.
Even if you see the bottom, you're just like, oh, cool cell phone case.
Mm-hmm.
So no one cares. But kind of like if you're listening to this and you kind of want to like take something from that, go to Best Buy, go to Target, and if you want to start hiking with fucking guns and shit, figure out a way to break down your gun to where it's so easy to reassemble, and just fucking throw it in a tripod bag, throw it in a camera bag, and you are now a wildlife photographer. And that also explains the camo. It turns out that like birding is like this own, like it has like its meta where like there are dudes that go birding in like ghillie suits.
Yeah.
And I didn't know that before. And I was just kind of like, oh, dude, what? So like you could go out there like in full camis and like just not have a visible gun. Or someone asks you, it's like, dude, I'm birding, and this bird is very startled.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's startled very easily. So I'm wearing this camouflage so I can hide from the bird. Really, what you're doing is you're erecting a forward operating base deep in the woods. But no one knows that.
Yeah, and that was actually something funny, is that one of my buddies, he's Poplar Front on Instagram. It's like a play on the Popular Front page.
Yeah.
He posted a story the other day where he he had like full bird watching gear, and he was like wearing camouflage, and he was like, it said something along the lines of like bird watching isn't illegal or something, and it was a picture of his notebook, and it had like a salute report written out for like practice, and I was like, that's so smart. Like, you don't need to go out there with a rifle to practice reporting. You don't even need to leave your house to fill out like range cards and stuff.
Well, you know who gave me probably like the biggest brain like option if you want to practice salute reports and like reporting and shit like that, or like building range cards. Reaper 1.1 was telling me that he would go on like a video. He would go on like Ghost Recon Wildlands, or like go on like Arma or some shit, or Battlefield, and one dude would just like, you would just like look at like an overlook, and he'd have like a rangefinder or whatever equipped, or he'd use like the little map rangefinder, and he would just kind of like have his dudes like stare at the screen, take off the entire HUD, and they would drop a range card, and then they would kind of verify it or like make it more and more detailed, and he would kind of be like, this is kind of how you want to build it. And I like, that's one of those like rainy day ideas where like no one's doing anything, or like for whatever reason you can't, like, it's just not tenable to go outside, or like know what someone, you know, like just one of those days where it's like, okay, I'm gonna save this from being a total like washout. And so like we can just order a pizza and just be like, all right, like I'm gonna pull up some images, and we're gonna just like build range cards off of them, or we're gonna like, you know, like you're gonna do sector sketches and shit like that, and it's stuff that you'd be doing in the field, but like you kind of like just bring it back to you, and you would kind of like, you could ask questions if you're teaching dudes like, hey, like what do you think are like the more valuable points to notate on this map, and then, or on this sketch, and like if you think those are important, we can get, you know, I'll make up a grid, or we can get a grid to the exact spot. It's like Arma or some shit, and we'll laser range find to it. We'll get the grid for that, and that'll be like a pre-plotted point, or like indirect. Like, you know, obviously you're LARPing a soldier, whatever. But like, it's one of those things that's kind of good to think about. Is like, well, now I know, like, you kind of know what to look for to plot on a sector sketch or a map, and you're just doing it from like a laptop.
And something too is that, you know, that's a really good idea too, of like doing it in a video game. But like when I was at a course recently, we did like a large portion, or like one of the chapters was about you know, terrain sketches and stuff. Like when you're in an observation post, or you know, like a surveillance spot, and you're doing these terrain sketches, and like basically waiting to do call for fires. And they told us, because, you know, most of us were staying in hotels, and they were like, okay, like your homework for tonight is to go and look out your hotel room window and make a terrain sketch of what you see. And they're like, use your like, you know, use your phone or whatever to figure out distances, all that stuff, and then, you know, map out where there's dead zones where you can't see, all that shit. And it's something that's free. It literally took me like 10 minutes to do, and it's really good practice. And then the more that you do it, the better you're gonna get at sketching. Because like my first terrain sketch, it literally looked like a 5-year-old on cocaine did it. Like, it looks so bad. And then, you know, after you do it more, you're like, okay, this is actually getting pretty good, and like the stuff is to scale, or not to scale, but it's like relative to each other, is like it is in real life. So it doesn't look like this car is like half the size of a building, shit like that.
Yeah.
You can like draw in
that's a
fake
great way to
stuff
do
too.
it.
Like you can be like, okay, this is gonna be like, okay, there's a road right here, I'm gonna draw a couple of armored vehicles here, or I'm gonna draw like a convoy of like fucking technicals or something like that, something that's realistic for you. Like for me, obviously, like tanks were realistic in that scenario, but for us, like doing this stuff,
you know, once you're doing civilian soldiering, once you're doing like regular people soldiering, it might be like I don't know, like technicals or some shit, or it might just be like, you might just be doing up a salute report solely because you saw another group of hikers, and you just want, because remember that ultimately, once you're hiking out in full kit, once you're doing this shit in the woods, like you might not have what I'd call enemies, but you definitely have things that could spoil your training. So like, oh hey, I see a group of hikers and they're taking the trail that we handrailed to get to the point we're at, to our OP, for example. Like we doglegged off the OP, and so you have, you know, you pull up that salute report, you write it up, and you just give it to someone. It's like, hey, I saw, like, you know, I saw 6 hikers. They're moving, you know, they're walking at a brisk pace. It's midday, so they're probably, you know, they might be hiking. They're hiking in the heat of the day or whatever, or while to see things. You know, you kind of extrapolate ideas, or, you know, they might be hunters. They're wearing mossy oak. They've got big rocks. They're dragging a game cart with them. Mm-hmm. They've got rifles with scopes. And, you know, you're not just building your salute. You're not doing these skills solely to like, oh, I'm hunting enemies out in the woods. It's literally just to kind of get a lay for your land. I mean, ultimately, that is what, like, if we want to boil down recce, a lot of your reconnaissance tasks are not a lot, but some of them are going to be like, hey, we just need a lay of the land. You set up your camp or your patrol base, whatever you want to call it. I'm kind of using camp interchangeably. A big part of me, even with soldiering, is I kind of want to get away from like military terms as best as I can. So like I'll just call it camp. But you're at your camp, you've got your security in place. And you might want to kick out like 1 or 2 dudes to go look around. And if they see something, you know, even if it's like nothing like dangerous, they might just see like, hey, there are hikers in this area. You might tailor your training for that. Like, okay, cool. If there's hikers around here, we don't know where they're at, so we're just not going to shoot. We might just work on patrolling. You know, and it's a training environment where your salute report, your sale report, is 100% valuable and important, and you're not fucking yourself over.
Yeah, and so like, you know, I started doing that that breakdown of the Ranger handbook, but kind of more oriented towards civilians. And it, like, so here's my take on that too. And I don't want to go off on like a long thing, because basically, all right, I'm going to make the point and then we'll go off on this. In the situation portion, when I was talking about like your 5-paragraph order and using SMEAC and all that, I think that the Army's template is like SMASA or something. But it was
yeah.
In the situation part, you know, part of the brief for like the situation paragraph is about enemies. And I put a note in there that enemy doesn't necessarily need to be somebody who's going to shoot at you or somebody who's going to, you know, come in and like rape your people. It's more, it could be like, you know, just the local populace that isn't going to take too kindly to like armed, you know, camouflage dudes walking around in their area. So there's people that are going to see that, like, you know, people that live in the backwoods, like retirees or whatever, they're gonna see you walking around on your fucking overt patrol like during the daytime on a main trail because you're dumb and your route planning was bad, and they're gonna see that and they're gonna be like, oh, this is weird, and they're gonna call like local police or game wardens or something like that. And it's still gonna be somewhat of a threat to you. You know, you're not doing anything illegal, you're not doing anything wrong, but it's gonna put like a damper on things, and it's gonna
I think when you Yeah, I think when you're looking at it in those terms, if you're setting up your, you know, your situation, you're setting up your op order for your training event, the enemy or threat are kind of interchangeable with like what's a threat to the training schedule. Like not so much a threat to me physically, more of a threat to what we're trying to do.
Yeah, if it's gonna,
to the mission, I guess.
I was just gonna say that if it's gonna stop your mission completion, if your mission completion is, hey, we're gonna go from this area to this area and observe a trail for a couple hours and then make our way back, and on that way, if you are like, okay, we're gonna get stopped by game wardens, we're gonna get questioned, like all that stuff, and they're gonna tell us not to do this anymore, like that's gonna put an end to this mission. So treat this stuff as an enemy. If you see, you know, and there's been times too where we've been walking back on like a main like 2-track or something like that at night because we're like, okay, we can see cars from a distance with NVGs and stuff. Like, you know, we'll just dive into the woods, and we've like walked right past where people are pulled off on the side camping, and we're like, all right, just stay low and stay quiet. You know, it's the middle of the night. Like, I don't see any activity around there, but let's try not to like be fucking seen. But
yeah, and I mean, you know, even in that situation, the last thing you want to do is make a ton of noise and freak someone out. They run out of their tent with a gun in their hands, shooting wildly.
Oh yeah,
thinking that Bigfoot's out there.
Especially during hunting season, when a lot of people have dogs and guns and stuff like that, they're gonna hear a bunch of noise, and you know, they might not be the smartest guy, and they might start shooting. But anyway, the thing I was gonna say is that for the Ranger handbook breakdown for civilians, I'm using that as not a way to like take out a lot of stuff. It's more so like I'm taking out the stuff that includes doing call for fires, because we're probably not going to do that. I'm taking out stuff that has to do with like military radios because that's not what kind you're using. Like on my communications side, in the actual Ranger handbook, it gives like all these charts and things of like military radios. People, like the average person scrolling on Instagram does not give a fuck between a 152 and a 117, and it's not going to ever matter to them. They're going to care about analog versus digital, or like radios that they're able to get. They're going to care about like what to replace their Baofeng with. So that's what I mean, because at the end of the day, the military, when we are not at war, the military trains to be at war. That is the entire purpose of it. They just have a lot more resources. For the average civilian, if you're not at war, you should be training to be at war with the resources that you have. And it's largely going to be a different mission set. Something that was brought up was that in, I forget what portion, but it was basically talking about shopping cart authoritarians post about like basically using your community and how not everybody needs to be like the door kicker gunfighter to support your mission. And somebody brought up a really good point that like the old lady down the road might make the perfect place for like a safe house. Like if she's cool with you, and if you're the guy that just helped her out with stuff like throughout the years, and she agrees with you, and you say, hey, you know, I'm gonna put a couple of guys here if that's cool, like those guys are gonna get cookies and breakfast in the morning. Like that's just what it is. They got the better end of the deal.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, shopping cart authoritarian's a big dude that harps on building those local relationships too. He hits hard on that whole like, hey, like get to know your neighbors, because, and this is kind of a point that like I'm kind of like trying to wrap my head around. It's not a bad point, I agree with it, but it's just kind of like one of those like, ooh, it kind of like lets the air out of your tires a bit. It's like you're probably never, if the balloon goes up, you're not going to count on anyone that's outside of walking distance, and that's just the truth. Like we have dudes that we train with or we hang out with or we're homies, but they might live, you know, 3 hours away by car, or they might live, you know, like they might live in other states, et cetera, et cetera. And, you know, there's a very real possibility you'll never see these people again. But your neighborhood, those people are living right next to you, and you're going to have to deal with whatever problems, concerns they're dealing with, and then whatever, you know, you're going to have to, at some point, confront that. If, you know, if shit really went down, like, hypothetically speaking, the Chinese invaded, or World War III started. And, like, you know, like, if there's, like, a crime problem in town, you know, it's people are going to go to you over, like, whatever the law enforcement is, if that gets disbanded or whatever.
Yeah.
It's just one of those, like, you kind of need to be, like, I'm not going to say well-known in your neighborhood, but you kind of need to be, like, known as, like, a reliable person. Even just being reliable is, like, kind of, like, its own, like, power. Like, just people think, like, okay, well, he can help us. He's, like, a handyman or whatever. Or he does this and that, or, hey, he was a soldier, or he was a cop. And it kind of, like, you that plus, like, going out with an olive branch really helps.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And a big thing on that too is that, like I said, not everybody's gonna be like, if you're looking at the guy that's down the road that's like, you know, he's cool with guns or whatever, but he's like fat as fuck and old, like, yeah, he's not gonna be going with you on a patrol, but he probably has large food storages. He probably has, you know, he's probably owned this place for a while, and he's very well established because he bought the house for half the price it's going for now. And like, he's probably gonna have a lot of tools that are going to be able to help you, that isn't necessarily, hey, go grab your shit, we're going to go check out this area and scout it out. It's like hey, this is what's going on here, and, you know, use your resources to help us out in a non, I guess for lack of better terms, like a non-kinetic way, if that makes sense. Yeah.
Well, I mean, dude, I mean, look at it this way. If you're in an urban environment, or even if you're not, everyone needs a driver. And a driver has the beauty of they can drop you off and they can just leave. And you don't have, I can tell you right now, there's a lot of places that I could train or like hike to that I cannot, because I would need someone to drop me off and then be on a good schedule to pick me up, because I cannot leave my car there. Or it's not even I cannot, but I just don't want to.
Well,
like, it's one of those situations where it's like, okay, cool, I leave my car here, and like someone comes like prying, or like they'll break open my window and they'll fuck it up. But
and the other thing too is like even parks that are in your area, like if you and some of your buddies that live close want to do like a quick overnight and you don't want to drive a couple hours to like the national forest or state forest or whatever, like have somebody's girlfriend or wife literally drive you guys, drop you off, you escape into the woods like you're doing an infill, and then say, all right, you're gonna come pick us back up at this spot at 7 in the morning the next day, and then you go out, you do all your stuff at night in like a fucking recreational park, and you're not seen, and you set up a hide site and you sleep that night, and then you make for your exfil, and when they pick you up, you make sure it's all safe and stuff, you load up and go back to your house and fucking go eat eggs or something.
Yeah, you go have breakfast or whatever. No, it's for sure like just the quote-unquote helicopter insertion for civilians. This is some dude driving you up and dropping you off and then being like, hey, I'll be back at this time, or you can call me.
Some dude with a minivan and a goatee.
Yeah, some dude with a minivan or a panel van that is just like a halfway decent driver and like doesn't have any like traffic infractions or anything.
Yeah, and he's reliable enough. Because that's the thing is that people are going to be reliable in other ways. Like, you're not going to count on this guy to go out and sleep in the dirt with you and like, pull Firewatch, but you're gonna count on this guy to be able to store some things at his house, or drive you places or whatever. And like the other thing too is that a lot of these people that are well established in their communities that have been there for a while, they have established a baseline that's decades in running. So any sort of to do like a combat hunter reference, like any sort of stimulus or any like things that are different in that environment, they're gonna notice. And they're going to be well enough established to where they're going to have a network of people that talk, because boomers love like calling people on the phone and talking for hours, kind of like we're doing right now.
Yeah.
But
I guess
they're going to like talk to somebody and they're going to be like, oh yeah, like these people moved in and like they're weird. And it's going to be like a couple streets over or in a place in your city that you're never going to know. But it's especially during like high tension times, like, hey, we've been invaded simultaneously by like 3 countries, and now at this point, all these people that look like they're from this country are living in this area. Like, it's gonna be a cause for concern.
It's gonna raise some flags. Yeah.
And
for sure.
You might not notice it either. But these people that are in your network are, and like they're gonna feed you that intel because they're gonna know that you're the guy that's gonna go do observation and check it out. And the thing is too is that like boomers are nosy as fuck, and a lot of like Gen Xers are too. So like, it's not going to be weird to have some old guy like drive by these people and be like, yeah, I saw all this stuff. And you're going to be like, holy shit, that is extremely good intel, because they're non-threatening.
Yeah. Well, I mean, so I'm reading a book right now on Francis Marion, the swamp fox in South Carolina during the Revolutionary War. Yeah, same dude. I just flipped through the pages and I just learned through osmosis.
Pictures.
It's a novel with no pictures, but I still like the pictures.
Can I get the novel in a pop-up?
Yeah, can I get a long form podcast on this novel?
Let me get one pop-up,
please. But yeah, no. So I'm reading through it, and I only read at work. I really don't. I hate to say it, like I don't read on my off time, but it's just because at work there's so much downtime that I dedicate that to like watch any shows or videos I want to, listen to podcasts, or like read. So I was hitting this book hard last week, and the book talks about how like Francis Marion's running his like little guerrilla force to South Carolina in quote unquote occupied British territory, and motherfuckers would just come up to him. They would just like he would be out like running around, and he'd just be like, all right, you guys, because all of his fighters were like just farmers. So they'd be like, hey, I gotta go tend to my crops, I gotta go see my family. So they would just leave, and then they would go and they would talk to the people who weren't fighters that just stayed back at their farms and stuff, and they'd come back and they'd be like, yo, there's like 30, 40 Tories at this tavern, and I forget what battle this was, but this dude, he would just get like this weird ad hoc intel, like, hey, they're all here and they're all like drunk as hell, like, let's go kill them. And Francis Marion like would sit down and he'd be like, all right, everyone's kind of telling me the same thing, like that's a good tip, let's go check it out.
Yeah.
And they would just go fight these dudes. Now granted, sometimes it doesn't work, sometimes you get and this is a problem with any network, is you do have people who will backstab you or double cross you. And allegedly during the Revolutionary War in South Carolina, this was a big problem. Like, if someone stole your horse, you would just switch to the side that was against him. It was like some crackhead shit. It'd be like it'd be like, oh, John Wilcox stole my horse. I'm going to join the Tories so I can go fight against him.
Yeah.
There's some crackhead shit, but I mean, like, these dudes would just get intel like that, like just this passing comment and go send recon scouts out. They'll come back and they'd be like, yo, it's good intel. Like, let's go fucking roll up on these nerds.
Well, that's the thing, is that it's like, think of it as like a form of passive income. So like a rental property is your passive income because people are occupying it and people are giving you what you want, which is money. And, you know, they're still benefiting from it because they have a place to live. In this way, it's passive income in the sense of these people are feeding you information because they know that you're going to go fucking shoot people. And they know that their community is going to be safer because of it. And like, if you establish that, and as long as you're not like the weird guy that wears like Gorkas in public and like fucking talk to yourself at the grocery store, like people are going to be more welcoming to you. If you are like a little bit more charismatic and you can talk to people and you can deal with the retardation that a lot of, you know, older people have, and you can just play it off as like, you know, a friendly conversation, like these people are gonna be cool with you, and they're gonna, you know, see you as somebody that can help them.
Yeah, and I mean, like we said earlier, everyone has their own value added. I mean, you'd be surprised, but someone who can cook a very large meal is gonna be a big fucking deal. Like shit like that. Like dudes are gonna be like you're gonna be looking around and being like, wow, it's gonna be. These dudes all bought all this canned food, but they have no idea how to cook. So they're just getting their morale's low because they haven't had like anything besides cold beans in like a week.
Well, the other thing too is that even when you're into the training portion, or like if you're establishing your community and all that stuff, a lot of these people too, they are either going to be business owners or no business owners. So it's something too where it's like, okay, you know, everybody's not out of a job yet. Everybody, you know, it's not like a full grid down situation, but in this sense, like, hey, my friend just lost his job, he needs a job, and somebody's gonna be like, oh, my brother owns a construction site, have him show up Monday for work. And like, you're able to establish your community in other ways that way too. It's not just like, hey, here's information to go fucking canoe people's heads. It's that actual like true community sense.
Yeah, no, 100%. And unfortunately, I don't mean to like dog on most people listening to this, or not most, but like at least a significant portion. This is not what I would call the most charismatic bunch.
Oh, I would agree.
So it's gonna be one of those like hey, stop being like autistic for like 10 fucking minutes and go be friends with your neighbors, and so that when the Taliban come, you can just kind of like eat them. I don't know.
Yeah, that's the thing that a lot of people need to get over, is that like if you're good at what you do, you don't have anything to prove, and you can be like a cool guy. Like a lot of the people that you read about that were like super hard hitters in the military and like had done like a crazy amount of shit are usually the coolest dudes to talk to. Like guys that I've met that have like, you know, been with and like worked with special operations and like done crazy amounts of stuff, and you look at them, you're like, they have literally killed like hordes of people. They're like super chill and laid back because they don't have anything to prove. The guys that are feeling unfulfilled with themselves and think that they haven't done what they should be doing are going to be like, I have something to prove. And they're going to be the guys that are dickheads, and they're going to be the guys that you don't want to talk to, because they're going to constantly be like trying to give off this thing of like, oh, I'm good.
I'm Billy Badass. Yeah. I'm John Expert.
And that's the thing, is like, if you're confident in your own abilities, and you're confident in the fact that like you're gonna be good in a gunfight or, you know, war or whatever, like just be a chill dude. That's because it's gonna work out so much better for you.
Yeah, no, that's true. You just, you know, just be cool. Don't be weird.
Yeah.
Something I wanted to touch on. We were talking the other day, or we were commenting about IFF, and like you dogged on the beret, and like, you know,
fuck that.
Fair. I get it.
Right,
whatever. But I want to revisit that idea at least briefly. What do you think about like brassards? Like, I don't know if the Marines, the PMO, wear like those like big fucking things on their shoulders that say PMO or MP or whatever. But in the Army, they sometimes do. And I'm looking at those, and all I could think about is like that would actually be pretty good for IFF if you just had like like 100 of those with like a patch field, like a Velcro field on it. I don't know how, like, it's kind of like tacky, but at the same time it's not, because it'd be better than like an ad hoc shoulder band or armband.
Yeah. I mean, the thing with the, hold on, because I'm gonna be honest, I don't know. I've spent most of my time honestly not on Marine bases. I've been to a couple, but like for the most part, like Marines we don't have Velcro on our shoulders, so we don't wear patches.
I get that. No, in the Army we do, but I'm not talking so much about like the thing having to attach to Velcro. It just kind of like loops onto itself onto your bicep.
No, I get it. Like
shoulder.
usually like guys that are on duty will have something like a big red thing that they slide over their arm that says that they're like the duty NCO. But yeah, that's the thing is like, I think that this is like a large topic to unpack, but
yeah,
I think
no, it is. I threw a big ass one on there because we could go on for hours about it.
Yeah. The main thing for me with IFF is like, unless you're trying to do some sort of like super low pro way, I think that you should have like layered IFF almost, where like,
oh, I agree. It like, shouldn't just be one thing that you rely upon. Like I'll be honest, when dudes say, oh, I have a patch for IFF, I'm like, okay, that's cool, but like, dude, you're asking me to look, like, if I'm looking at you on patrol from like 400 yards away, I'm not gonna be able to see what the fuck that patch is, dude. Even with the spotting scope, like, I might be able to make out like the general design on it, but I'm not gonna be able to say, like, dudes put words on it, and it's like, I don't know what that. Yeah, I'm not gonna see that.
Yeah, especially
so you either have to go with a recognizable like shape, like first cav has that gigantic monstrosity on their shoulder, but at least like a mile away when you see it, you just know like, oh, that's a first cav shield.
Yeah. Yeah, and with that too, like the problem is that if you have IFF in that way and you're trying to do some sort of like partisan guerrilla type shit, it's going to be super recognizable what your allegiance is, and if you are caught or anything like that, like there's no way of getting out of that. There's no way of being like, oh yeah, like we're just the locals, like trying not to die. It's literally like, hey, you're affiliated with this. And that's why I don't think that, like, you know, if everybody right now that's listeners to this and is like, you know, this is our thing, like if we're, you know, one big community, it's not like it should be like a, hey, everybody wear this super recognizable patch, because one, in terms of like issues that we have to worry about now, with the current state of things, you seem like you're organized, which is not good. Anytime that like you seem like you're an organized faction with guns, you know, it doesn't matter how,
knocks
like,
on your door.
Yeah, literally, it doesn't matter what any of your what any of like your sub points are, what any of your motives are, anything like that. If you are an armed, organized group with guns, you will be looked at, and all it takes is one anonymous tip, and you're getting a knock on your door, and people are saying you are an organized group, and you know that's not gonna fly. So I think that like having your own individual, like if you're small circles, having something like that, is cool, but I think that bigger things are like layering, like everybody who has the same, you know, uniform. That's why, like, that's one of the main things with camouflage for me is like, honestly, if I wear AOR2, Multicam Tropic, M81, anything like that, if I'm in the woods, I'm gonna blend. Like, I'm gonna be able to do it because I have that capability. I know how shadows work. I know how lighting works. So for me, like, if I'm doing training with my guys and it's like a, hey, this is going to be a casual camp setting and then we're going to go do like these main things, I'm going to be like, wear whatever the fuck you want. Like, I don't care. Wear, you know, just regular hiking clothes if you want. Like, I literally do not care. But if it's like a, hey, we're in this area that we don't know, and there's, you know, we don't know anything about this and we don't want to be fucked with because we don't know anybody here, we don't know this area, we're out of our normal state, it's like, yeah, we're gonna be uniform, because if you're, you know, sleepy at night or anything like that and on watch, and you didn't hear the one guy go to take a piss and some random guy walks into your camp, the first thing you're gonna be able to see as soon as you shine a light on them is like, hey, they're wearing the same exact thing I am. It's gonna be fine.
Yeah, and I mean, uniform goes into different ways. I know that there are dudes out there that for their groups they've got like it's just flat colors, but it's like how you're wearing it. So like you'll wear like a green shirt with tan pants, and everyone's wearing a green shirt with tan pants.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
like,
and
like
it's like
big macro things to look at. It's not like a little 2x3 square on your shoulder that your shoulder might not even be facing somebody, right? You might be squared to them.
Yeah, or they might be prone and you're not going to see shit.
Yeah,
but like, that's why I brought up the idea of berets, because it's like it's recognizable headgear, and it doesn't have to be a beret, but it's just like the idea that like if your group standardized on, if your implicit group standardized on, let's say, boonie caps with the front pinned up, and you saw a group of 3 dudes far away with boonie caps with the front pinned up walking around, it's a pretty safe assumption that unless your fucking uniform method has been spoiled, those are probably your dudes.
Yeah.
And it really should be about macro IFF, not like micro IFF.
Mm-hmm.
Like seeing a US flag patch on someone's shoulder is cool, but unless that bitch is full color and like big, you're not gonna see it from far away. You're just gonna see a brown blob.
Yeah.
With like a little like speckle of red and blue on it.
Yep.
So
that's because that's the thing too, is like far away, like you're not gonna see that shit. If you see 3 guys walking and you can like zoom in and be like, oh, they're wearing this pattern and they're wearing like this headgear, and now that I study it more, like I recognize that plate carrier setup, stuff like that, you're like, oh, these are our guys. I think that a lot of it is gonna be I mean, a lot of it too is like redundancies, right? Like first and foremost, you should know where everybody's at. That's in your circle. You should know, like if you're out in the woods in like a quote unquote non-permissive environment, you should know like the status of everybody through proper communication methods. But if something goes on and somebody says, hey, we're gonna go check out this spot, and it's like a couple days and they're coming back and they're like not reporting, maybe their batteries died or whatever, and like you see guys walking from a distance and you can zoom in on them and be like, okay, these are our guys. That's kind of like how I see it. So it shouldn't be like hey, I didn't know that you were in this environment, even though like I talk to you daily and you're like in my planning,
Yeah, no, for sure. No, just kind of something to think about for everyone listening. Just kind of like figure out what your IFF is going to be and make it a macro, not a micro thing.
Mm-hmm.
And then make it something. To me, another big thing is like if you're going to make it a macro thing, have the logistics to kind of like stockpile it.
Yep.
Which is why like this is probably gonna ruffle a bunch of feathers. A lot of dudes that are getting into fieldcraft or have been in fieldcraft have some esoteric camo patterns.
Oh my god, dude!
And
don't even get me started.
That's gonna bite you in the ass if you do. Like, let's say you get 6 motherfuckers that want to join you. If you were gonna fall back on uniforms and like some shit went down, that's not gonna happen anymore. Like you're not like, oh, eBay's gone, dog. The Chinese submarines have destroyed every ship coming from fucking Europe. Like,
yeah, we're
on our own. And guess what? The USPS is, they're moving ammo and they're moving materiel. They're not moving your pattern 142 summer weight shirts, like, so like you need a, if you're going to do something esoteric, you need to stockpile it, and you need to stockpile it in different sizes. Because you can be like, oh, well, I'm not going to have any fat dudes. Yeah, but you're going to have tall dudes.
Yeah.
You're going to have short dudes. You don't want some short dude, some dude that's 5'5" wearing like an XL fucking tunic that's supposed to just be like a button-up shirt. The dude has to like wear like an Alice belt around it, and it looks like he's wearing like a skirt.
It looks like a onesie, like a dashiki.
Yeah. And it's like he's wearing a man dress, and it's like that's not going to be conducive to him either. So just something to think about. It's why you'll see. I mean, I know you do it, and I do it too. We tend to stick to U.S. surplus patterns, and it kind of sucks because everyone, I understand the desire to set yourself apart, be different. It's fucking cool. I get it, but at the same time, I can go to a surplus store. I can go to a post exchange, and I can fucking get multicam. I can get Marpat. I can get fucking UCP. I used to be able to get UCP, not anymore. But you can get shit like that.
Yeah. And
is it the best for your environment? No, but is it the best for? Is it the best logistical thing for your environment, it very well could be. And it's also why solid colors kind of fuck too, because like go to Walmart, go buy a Wrangler green shirt, and you're set.
Yeah, and that's the other thing too, is that like if you have proper field craft and like you know how to conceal yourself, it's not gonna matter whether you're wearing like this or that, to a degree obviously, but if you know how to like properly get around that stuff, it's not gonna be like a huge deal. Or even, you know, to add on to that, like buy a couple Viper hoods and use those.
Yeah, because
at that point, like the main majority of your body is going to be you know, visible for like, oh, it's this pattern, it's this macro IFF. But if you're like in a hide site and you're, you know, down low with a bunch of grass on you, like nobody should be able to see you, right? But one thing too is like a while ago I was trying to get, this is like a couple of years ago, like when COVID like kind of started. It was in the summer. I remember I was trying to get a pair of these UF Pro pants, and there was like a couple of US websites that had them, and I'd like order it, and it'd be like weeks would go by and I wouldn't get like a shipping notification, and I'd email them and I'd be like, hey, what's going on with this? And they would say, oh, sorry, you know, shipments from Europe have been largely stopped. We cannot get that in stock, and they're having supply problems in Europe getting this fabric to this distributor because of the way that like the borders are and all that shit. They're like, it's going to be like a while before we have that in stock. And I'd cancel an order, go to another website, order it, same thing. Or like I'd go there, everything's out of stock. So like be cool with wearing like standard BDUs as a backup. Be cool with, you know, using solid color bottoms that are the proper shade for your environment, things like that. Like, yeah, you don't need to have like, you don't need to be like, oh, I'm gonna, you know, me and my guys are gonna use Finish MO5 because we've never seen that around here. It's gonna be like great, it's perfect for this environment. Like, that's sweet, but if you get a US surplus pattern and, you know, darken it a little bit with the natural environment, like you'll be good.
Yeah, yeah. And that's not to say you shouldn't use that's not to say you shouldn't use like a special camo that's like perfect for your environment. Like, I agree, if it is the best option, you should use it, but just bear in mind that if you ever want to see growth during some during hard times, you're going to have to figure out the logistics of it. And it could just be as easy as like, I'm going to buy fabric and I'm going to learn how to sew. Yeah. And then you just keep rolls of fabric, and then it's like, cool, there's no logistical burden anymore. You just make the uniforms.
Or something, make it something even as far as like, hey, me and all these guys are gonna every month put in $20 into a pool, and once we have X amount of money, we're gonna bulk order like a whole bunch of this shit and stock it.
Yeah, pretty much. Like, just kind of stack it deep, stack enough uniforms for like a fuck ton of dudes, and just kind of work from there. I forget what the Revolutionary War like outfit was. It was like you just matched like a blue coat with like a red vest and like a white shirt. It was something like that. And it was clothes that you could have. Like, it didn't have to be the same exact blue coat. It was just like everyone probably has like a blue coat. Everyone probably can get like a red vest. And everyone has a white shirt. And you kind of like put those together. Is it brightly colored? Yeah, but I mean, like, you know, that was in vogue at the time. If you want to make some sort of partisan or guerrilla force in some cataclysmic event, and you want to stick to macro patterning, you really should think about like what's easy to get. Like, it's slept on. You don't want to have 80 dudes and you can't clothe them, and then they're all just they're in their regular clothes, and then all of a sudden you have serious IFF issues doing any sort of operation.
Yeah, because as soon as something like that happens, generally like you're gonna spike, because you're gonna stop purity spiraling, and you're gonna stop being like, oh, I need guys that are at my level or better. You're gonna be like, I need guys that can fight. And your standards are going to drop to a degree, and you're going to pick up guys that are local, and you're going to be like, hey, we need to get this for you. And it's not going to be like a, hey, you know, browse eBay, and when you find the best deal on this like weird thing, you're going to order it. It's, hey, you need this now because I don't want somebody to accidentally shoot you for whatever reason. And something too is like, if you are just anti using like US surplus patterns, at least use domestically manufactured patterns. Like ATAX is a good example of that. I know there's like a lot of shit going on now with like Russia and all that, but like if you use ATAX based patterns, is, you know, say what you want about ATAX, it's not the best, it's not the worst, whatever, but it's not a US surplus pattern, but it's US manufactured, and it's like all domestic. And if you go into almost any surplus store, they're going to carry it. So that's like, you know, just think of it that way too. If you don't want to use US surplus patterns, if you don't want to use multicam, M81, whatever, for, you know, IFF in your area might be like, hey, there's a large presence of people that are wearing M81. It's going to be hard to differentiate ourselves, so we don't want to use that. We don't want to use multicam because it sucks in our environment. Like,
yeah,
I don't know, man. Get some ATEX or use solid colors and make your own stuff or whatever the case
or
is.
shit, man. You know what? You know what's probably the most common pattern in the U.S. is probably like something like mossy oak.
Yeah,
you know, like real tree. And you're just like, all right, cool. Go to Walmart and see if they have any mossy oak left in stock.
You know what would be
like
a fucking flex if you had like 12, like a full like squad of like 13 dudes completely decked out in like Sitka hunting camo.
Yeah, too bad Sitka's like expensive. That's the other problem too. Is like, okay,
that's
cool.
why it'd be the flex.
It'd be a super flex because it's expensive.
Oh, is that Cry? This is Sitka. Go Cry. Go cry about it.
Yeah. Basically, but I mean that, you know, that's, yeah, it's just ideas. It's just throwing out ideas if you want to do macro IFF, like, you know, shit like that.
There's a lot of different ways to do it. It's a lot of it just, I think a lot of people need to, I think that the biggest problem, not the biggest, but I think that a very large problem is that a lot of, and this is like a very big topic too that we can go in forever, is that a lot of people focus on what you see in pictures of guys that are doing overseas, and you're not understanding everything that led up to that. So you don't understand the planning portion. You don't understand how intricate their route selection was to get to their target site. You don't understand what the logistic backing was to make sure that they had batteries and food and all that stuff to get to that point. You don't understand how much stuff was on standby waiting for them to get fucked up in an ambush and exfil them. You don't understand, you know, how much planning went into the gear that they're using. And even though it's, you know, whatever their setup is might not be the best for you because it's just different mission sets, but like their supply lines were largely like, hey, this is what we're going to use because this is what we're getting the most supply of. Generally, it's based off of like contracts and what the military says and things like that, but it's the same concept for you. And I would say that it's, even though you don't have the same amount of like a budget that SOCOM and you know, the US military and all these different groups have, you have the freedom to where you can do whatever's best for you. Because the thing is too, and I think I said something on this recently, is like the tactics that are in like the Ranger Handbook, for example, or like a lot of the stuff, they are saying, okay, we're gonna put in here because we have a limited amount of pages that we can print this on, or a limited amount of like, you know, information that we can put into this book. We're gonna put the most general thing in here because it's gonna be the best
cover the most bases.
Yeah. Exactly. So for you are gonna be like, okay, I'm in this part of the US, I'm in fucking northern Minnesota, and this is what my terrain is like, and this is what the cities are like, and this is like, I am staying here until I die. You can literally form every single tactic and method to that environment. You don't have to say, okay, we're going to be in, you know, Djibouti today, and then we're going to be in fucking Afghanistan tomorrow, and then we're going to be in South America the next week. Like, you don't need to worry about that stuff. That's why like multicam, for example, became popular, because it's good enough in the majority of environments. And it's not like they need to, every single time that another mission set comes up and they need to hurry up and get the fuck out of there and go to the site within, you know, X amount of hours, they're going to be good enough for that environment, you know?
Yeah, exactly. It just covers most of the bases.
Mm-hmm. So that's the thing, is that they don't have the freedom to pick the best thing for one environment, whereas you do. You can literally pick the absolute best thing for your environment that's logistically realistic and like just standardize it. And the other thing too that I even had a problem with before with my guys is that we would try to make it so that everybody was cool with the standardization, which that's not, you don't need to do that. Like if you have a couple of core guys that everybody looks to and everybody's like, okay, yeah, these guys have been here since I started hanging out with this group and they're pretty locked on. Like if you and like 3 other guys are kind of like the main dudes, like just say, hey, this is what we're going to do, decide on it, and then tell everybody else, hey, this is what we're doing. And if they don't like it, then just don't invite them.
Yeah, basically. Like if you can't, that's another thing too, is there's just a lot of, you're going to come across a lot of people that aren't quite in that, what's the word? They aren't at that point yet where like they actually give a shit.
Yeah.
And so you're gonna be fighting that uphill battle, and sometimes it's just better to just kind of cut sling load and just be like, I don't think so, dog.
Yeah.
It was cool, but like it's clear that you're not meshing with us for whatever reason, or if you want to do things your way, you can gladly make a group and we can give each other pointers, and that's as far as we go. Like I'm not gonna integrate you in the group if you're just not gonna play ball.
Well, yeah, that's a huge thing, is like if you say, hey, you know, this is what we're using is standard uniform. Here's, you know, a buying list for something that's a $60 set of, you know, surplus BDUs, and this is like the cry option or like other similar tiered options. Like buy whatever you want within this buying list. And they say, no, I'm gonna just wear this like weird pattern that they prefer for whatever reason. Just be like, okay, just don't invite them, because it's, if somebody can't spend $60 to match everybody else and they don't understand, 1, why it's important, 2, they don't want to put in the effort, and 3, they're just spending their money on dumb shit instead of something that can, you know, literally like save your life, they're not going to put forth the effort to like
train.
Yeah, exactly. They're not going to put forth the effort to do LDA crossings in a river when it's fucking raining out and shitty. You know what I mean? Like it's something that's super simple. If they're not gonna do the simple thing, they're not gonna do the advanced difficult things.
Yeah, it's just that. It's like, cool, like you really don't want to put forth the effort for this and this. It's like, all right, man, like you can kind of like, you can go that way, you can go fuck off.
And that's why I will always say that, like, if you can find guys that are like, hey, this is what I want to do, and this is like really cool, and this is something that I'm like very highly interested in, I just don't have the gear, like keep extra gear for those guys until they get up to speed, because they have the right mindset, they have the motivation. If you bring them out and they're like an awesome as fuck addition, and they'll gladly take every Firewatch that they need to take, they're in good shape, they know, you know, basics of like camping and survival and things like that, and they can teach other guys things, or they'll go out of their way to learn shit to teach guys things. Like those are the assets that you need to have like an extra rifle around that's basic enough for them to use, and have some extra gear until they're able to get their own. Like I'm gonna take a guy like that because I have extra gear and extra guns, than somebody who has all of the coolest gear, but as soon as you're like, hey, we need to do this, they're like, I don't want to train that.
Like, all right, well then.
Yeah, all right, well then go hang out by yourself, I don't care.
Yeah, I think that's kind of like a hard pill for some people to swallow. It's like, well, I want to do it my way. It's like, well, then you can make your own group, dog. I don't know what to tell you.
Yeah, and that's like the biggest thing. Like anybody that's like, I don't want to do that, I'd rather do this. And if you say, okay, that's cool, we'll do that another time, and they say no, like, all right, go do it on your own. Because, you know, on one hand, you can say that this is harder than doing stuff in the military to a degree, because you don't have the UCMJ backing you and you tell people to do things. Like for me, like in the Marines, if I tell somebody to do something and it's like a legit order and they don't do it, like I can fuck their world. You can't do that in this because it's all voluntary. Somebody's just going to say, all right, I don't want to come out anymore. But at the same time, you get the benefit of none of these guys are under a contract. So if somebody starts fucking off and isn't, you know, dedicated and doesn't want to do the things that you're implementing, then just stop inviting them.
Yeah, it's literally like, all right, goodbye.
Yeah.
No, it's definitely that easy. Speaking of which, I'm thinking about doing a hike soon, kind of like a big, throwing a wide net and seeing who shows up down here in my area. I'm not sure how that's going to work, but, you know, we'll see.
I would say that, and obviously you can do it how you want, because this is me saying this from a couple thousand miles away.
Yeah.
I would say that, like, I guess if you're listening to this, like, if you're in that region, just shoot you a DM and figure it out
Yeah.
from there.
I'm still trying to figure out the date, but it'll be within this month or the next.
Yeah.
For sure.
And
Just kind of because if I wait later in the year, it's going to be fucking hot as balls.
Yeah, dude, fuck that.
And it's going to be full of bugs. No, this area is hell. Hell on earth, for sure.
And I'm gonna make the assumption that if you're listening this deep into this episode right now, like, you're probably about it, and it'll be good. At the same time, though, I will say that it's not completely unlikely that if this has gained attraction in the circles that maybe are not on the same side as us with things, that they're probably still going to be listening. So
yeah, maybe. Who knows? I don't know. Whatever the first thing is going to be, it's going to be an unarmed hike. Like, I don't want, if dudes show up with ARs, it's like, cool, dude, like, leave that in your car. We're not doing that. Like, I'm not trying to meet a bunch of dudes that I've never met before with guns in the woods. It'll be one of those, like, all right, like, if you want to come, we're going on a hike, and we're just going to walk and talk and fucking, it's mostly, I'll be honest with you, like, as selfish as it sounds, it's mostly for me to kind of gauge who's around me.
Yeah.
Like, it's just kind of
like a community building thing too. Like,
it is.
You're within 2 hours and you have, 6 guys that are pretty squared away. Like, all right, we'll be in contact. Or, hey, you're within this area and I think that you're a fucking absolute idiot and you're gonna get everybody killed. Like, I know not to go to that neighborhood.
Yeah, I know that if I'm going into that neighborhood, I'm gonna soften it up with mortars.
Yeah, no shit.
No, I wish I had a mortar, but no, you know what I mean. It's just like, oh, okay, cool. Like, now I know.
Yeah.
But
speaking of the mortar, have you ever seen that picture where it was like, I think it was like IRA or like something in Syria or something, but these guys had made their own makeshift mortar out of using a furnace that they cut the top off and they would lob propane tanks.
Base. I wonder what's it like to be on the receiving end of that?
Dude, imagine like being in some building and like just looking out the window and all of a sudden like a propane tank just fucking flies through the roof.
Just evaporates you.
Yeah. It's fucking crazy.
Jesus.
Was there
would the tank explode or would it just like,
I have no idea. I saw
like slam into the ground? I
saw a picture of the furnace like propped up and a bunch of propane tanks around it. It had like a brief description, but I cannot remember if they would blow up or if they were filled with propane or explosives or what. Like, I wonder if you like were able to fill up a propane tank with like tannerite, if that would work. I don't know. I have no intention of ever doing this because I'm lazy and I have no like realistic use for it, so I'm just not going to, but it's fun to think about.
Yeah, I have no skin in that game.
Oh, also, that reminds me. So this is something that kind of bothered me, but I didn't really like want to make a big deal because it was like a 24-hour thing. So recently I made a story and it was saying, do you think that civilians need body armor? And I meant that, and dude, so many people messaged me and they're like, no. And I'm like, why not? And they're like,
really?
And well, because they had misread it and they read too deep into it, because everybody in this circle is autistic, including me. But they were like, oh, I live out in the middle of nowhere. Like, I don't need body armor because I don't see myself being in a situation where I'm in like a big city. I'm like, okay, that makes sense. Or like some guy messaged me and he was like, oh, I was in Iraq and Afghanistan and I needed it there, but like here to go down the road to the gym, like I don't need body armor. Like I just went and I was fine. And I'm like, you're missing the point completely. Like, it's not whether you need it to get from one place to another because you're taking fire to go to work or to go to fucking 7-Eleven. Like, do you need it in the sense of, do you think that civilians need it in this is like a broad sense of like, do you think that civilians should have the same type of gear as like police in the military? That's like all it was. So many people were like, oh, people should focus on more important things like food storage and water. I'm like, yeah, you're right, but like it's a principle thing.
That's not what I'm asking. That's not what I'm asking.
Yeah, literally. I was like, it's the same thing. Like, do civilians need full autos? For me, like, dude, I don't need a full auto. Like, I have never used full auto to a point where it was like beneficial and all that, but like, should I have access to it? Fuck yeah.
I love full auto, but I don't have belt feds, so it's kind of like
yeah. That's the other thing too. Is like I don't have a belt fed. Should I have access to them? Like, yeah, I should be able to get them, 100%. But like, do I need one right now? Do I need to stick a belt fed on the window to my office and like have it aimed in my wooded backyard? Like, no. I mean, technically, it's the same thing. Like how many people listening to this have actually been in a situation where you've needed to use your gun going from like point A to point B? Like how many people listening to this have drawn on somebody? If you don't, I can argue with the same logic that you don't need a gun.
Yeah.
It's the exact same thing. Like, I don't need a gun because I've never had to pull my gun on somebody. Like, yeah, there's been a couple times where I've been around homeless people in the city and I've like have thought about like, all right, I might have to do a show of force, but I'm not like pointing my gun at people like while I'm driving to like get out of a hairy situation or like diffusing something. But like
I live my life by running the fade. I pull out the MP5 and I just point it at people.
Yeah, everything I do is like a Mike Durant like situation LARP. Like if I'm in the city,
DMV?
I imagine
DMV Mike Durant.
I imagine that I'm just in fucking Mogadishu as a pilot. Everybody around me is an enemy.
Powerful.
Yeah.
But no, I don't know. I couldn't tell you what. I don't know, man. I mean, to the extent it is also the reality of being detached from like violence in the U.S. We see violence through TV, and it's cool, and it's exciting, and it's entertaining, and it doesn't compare to like true violence when you see it like when you see like some kid's dead body on the side of the road in like some third world country, and you're like, oh fuck, like that kid just died like unceremoniously. Yeah. His parents are probably dead. He's dead, like just dead there.
And like I was actually talking about this with my boss the other day. We were because I was telling him about in Yellowstone, like when I went through there a couple of years ago, there would be signs everywhere that are like, don't fuck with the buffalo. And then like you drive and you'd see a bunch of the buffalo or bison or whatever they are, and you'd be like, oh, that's cool. And you'd see some guy standing like 6 feet away with a giant ass camera like taking close up pictures, and you're like, I hope that guy gets fucking trampled. And it's because people don't like, because of the detachment of violence, like you said, and like with movies and video games and TV, like people are so desensitized to that. And it kind of goes back to what we were saying too about like main character syndrome. People are so detached to actual violence that they don't understand that it's real, and that like you're gonna get fucked up and you're gonna live the rest of your life fucked up if you survive. And
yeah, that's
like the biggest thing that people don't realize. And it's just like because of movies and TV and all that shit are like making it as something that doesn't seem real. Like me going to work, I can say, okay, I work in a bad area. I don't like it. I'm not comfortable like walking around at night in that area. But at the same time, like I've never like driven around dead bodies or like gotten out of my car and smelled, dead people.
Yeah. Yeah.
I haven't smelled what like a dead body is like sitting in the sun for 6 days when I like get out of my car to go into the gas station.
Yeah, I don't know, man. It's just one of those things that I think a lot of people just don't kind of like run through in their head. It's like, oh, I could die right now, and the lights could just go out.
Mm-hmm. I mean that's the like so many times too. It's like something simple. Like so many people die in like bar fights because they go outside and somebody gets hit and they fall and they hit their head on a curb. That's it. They're dead.
Just die.
Like multiple people have. I saw this on like a thread one time or like a forum or something, where there was like a handful of people that were talking about how like they basically got off on like an accidental murder charge because they got in a fight with somebody and they hit them and the guy hit their head on like a parking block and fucking died. That's it. Like it really doesn't take much. Like you can be driving down the highway and something happens to your car and you flip 6 times and you die. Like,
yeah, you just die.
Yeah, that's it. That's it. You're dead. But that's why like another thing too is people need to approach this stuff too from like an anti-consumerist take. Is like okay, so I mentioned about like barrel lengths the other day, and we kind of briefly talked about that earlier. Like,
yeah,
if you have a 20-inch barrel versus a 14.5, like you're essentially gonna get the same broad effects. Yeah, if you really study it, you say like, oh well, this is going to travel this much further, this is going to have a bigger velocity when it hits the target. Like, yeah, no shit. But the end result, it's like a binary thing. Is it going to kill them? Is it going to kill who needs to be dead, or what needs to be dead? Yes. Okay, it's gonna be fine. No. All right.
Yeah.
You should probably get something else. Like, is this gonna function for my thing? Like, I can go on and I can say that, you know, using this like shape water container is the most optimal because of like the ergonomics, and you know, you can fit 6% more water and all this shit. But like the majority of people are gonna be like, okay, I have this Nalgene bottle that I got for $6 and it works fine. That's like you're going too deep, because you have nothing better to focus on, and you have the want to consume things and buy things, which is cool. Like, I want to buy shit all the time, but
yeah,
like, people need to focus less on like, oh, what barrel length am I running, and instead of, you know, dropping another $900 on like a different upper that's going to give you negligible difference in effectiveness,
yeah,
like, use that toward other things. Use that toward buying extra gear for your guys. Use that toward, you know, food preps. Use that toward community stuff. Like, there's so many better things that you can do versus being like, oh, this is going to give me like a marginally better effectiveness for something that I'm never going to do. And that's even with barrel length. Like, people will be like, oh, well, you know, if I get this, I'll be able to shoot out to, you know, 600 yards. And I'm like, have you ever done that? Have you ever shot past 200 yards or even 300? Can you do it? Like, it doesn't matter what the object can do. It's what can you do with that object. And if you're good enough, you can probably do it with stuff that's the same. Like, if you get a 14.5-inch gun or a 16-inch, like, you should be able to shoot a reasonable distance, like 500 meters with it, no problem, and you should be able to clear buildings with it, and like, you're good. That's it. And like, end of story.
Yeah, I agree, 100%. Oh shit.
But
no,
that's
just...
like the focus of a lot of people is like, what gear do I need, instead of like, what things do I need to learn how to do. Like,
yeah,
you can either spend all that money on like all this gear, or you can go buy a book off of Amazon for $20 and read about like small unit tactics and go train it, and you're getting exercise, you're getting fresh air, you're building camaraderie with your friends, you're building up like your overall capabilities, and you spent $20 and however much it costs in gas to get to that area.
Yeah, no, I agree with you.
People just don't like to read.
True.
Yeah.
It's, you know, I can tell you like where to get field manuals and shit, but the odds of you actually going through and like reading through it, or, you know, unless I make a compelling case, it's just not going to happen.
Yeah, unless you have like a true interest in it. Like, if you're like, oh, it'd be cool to do CQB, but you're not going to start looking up pubs on like how to do CQB. Like, I mean, I guess the first thing you need to realize with CQB is that you're going to get shot. But if you don't like have the time and effort that you're doing to like set this up and go through with it and learn everything and take courses and all that, like, it's you're not really about it, you're about the idea of it. And like, that's fine. It's something that you need to think about and realize that it could be a true thing. But like, everybody's talking about recce rifles. How many people know how to use their radio to talk, you know, 6 miles through the hills? How many people know how to do a proper salute report? How many people know how to move, you know, around an objective? You know, you shouldn't be moving,
how many people,
like, straight towards your target versus to the side, because they're going to see you. How many people know how to do proper camouflaging with, you know, natural vegetation? Like, all this shit. Like, do you have a spotting scope? Do you have binoculars, a rangefinder? Like, dudes were fucking doing hardcore recon in Vietnam with Colt commandos.
Yeah,
with iron sights.
Like, don't. I think a lot of it is just people miss the forest for the trees, and then they just really like the trees. They don't really care for like, okay, well, yeah, you're getting this to accomplish this goal.
Mm-hmm.
And I think if someone is getting into this stuff and they're going on their first hike, I think they should just like get like a very basic, like, okay, take your outdoor equipment with you, and then just kind of go on a hike. Like, learn how to land nav. Once you learn how to land nav, learn a little survival or have like a good plan, and just kind of like find a point on the map close to a trail and just kind of go to it. And then once you get there, kind of like notate like, hey, these are points of interest. This is that. And then you can start kind of, you know, you just work at it incrementally.
I would say too that like a really good exercise for something like land nav would be if you have 5 guys that you're gonna do it with.
Yeah.
If you're the one that's training them, if you're the one that's the most expert on it, do like all your training stuff and show them how to do everything. Like provide them with maps. You can go to Staples and laminate shit super cheap, or you can print it off, whatever. Like do all that stuff, give them all the classroom prep, and then what you do is in a forest area, like if there's a decent area with like small roads and 2 tracks and trails and stuff, like drop all your guys off at a different point, park somewhere, walk in, and then get on the radio and pass them all your grid, and then have them come find you.
Yeah, just kind of like do like a hide and seek.
Yeah, because at that point you can practice doing proper exfills with a vehicle, which we're not doing helicopter infills and exfills. We're doing it based off of vehicles, like we were saying earlier. You're practicing the actual land nav portion itself. While they're standing by, they're going to be in like a hidden, concealed position, so it's going to help with like their hide site surveillance position. You're going to get the radio portion down, and then they're going to like do the bulk land nav thing. Like there's so many like little training things that they can do just in that, and so many things that they're even going to realize with like, okay, I don't have, they might not have a rifle with them, but have them bring all their gear besides that. Like if you're in an area where you can't really use a rifle, have them bring their pack fully packed up for a week in the woods. Like they're going to start to realize pretty quick how their pack is not set up optimally, and it's not even going to be like, oh, we have to sleep out here. It's just like, okay, when we find each other, then we're going to get back in the car and go grab a burger.
Yeah, you just kind of finish the exercise then and there, and you kind of run the AAR at at a restaurant, just kind of like hanging out, eating.
Yeah, so that's like something that you can do that realistically for that. Like, yeah, you're expecting everybody has radios and things like that, but there's so many like training things that you can do in there that are beneficial to know, and so many little things that guys are going to have for individual considerations. And every single time that like we go on a trip, I have everybody write up an AAR, and I keep track of the AARs to see trends, like over time. But I'll have them do individual considerations and group considerations, and then if anybody has an issue with somebody else, I'll have them message me like privately and tell me, so that way I can kind of take care of it. And it could be something as simple as like, hey, or they'll do it publicly. Like there was a time where we were like in the mountains and stuff, and somebody was like, hey, I know that your rifle was like condition 3 the whole time, but I looked down your barrel a couple times, like just keep an eye on that. And dudes will be like, holy fuck, I had no idea. Like I'm always really good with that, but I'm in a different environment, like with multiple people around me. I need to be more considerate of that, and like it could stop a potential safety concern, just things like that.
Oh, for sure. I mean, AARs could be like, hey, I personally didn't bring enough water. I think that like in this area I went through X amount of water, so like if we're making a load plan for next time, let's make sure that we like address that need. And I mean, AARs are always good, and they can be simple, they can be informal, they can be complicated. I mean, like you could have dudes write it out, or you could have just tell you like, hey man, I fucked up, like my insoles suck, or the insoles in these boots suck, and it's like, all right, well, we'll work on that.
Yeah, that's why
little things here and there.
That's why I always have an individual and like a group one. And then like I'll say too, like, is there anything I could have improved on? Like there's times where guys will be like, yeah, I didn't feel like I was prepared to try to cross an LDA because you didn't properly teach us how to do it. And yeah, like I might have talked about it before, like in messages, and like provided a couple of documents and pubs on how to do it, or like a couple of videos, but that's a lot different than actually training it a couple times and then being able to implement it. So there's so many things that like, hey, you didn't implement a good enough comm plan, so halfway through we were trying to scramble to figure out what frequencies to be on. Like, yeah, that's my bad, I forgot to do that. And I end up taking a lot of the criticism just because a lot of the stuff that goes wrong is like bad planning on my part, or like I just kind of overlook things, and then I'm like, oh shit, this guy's literally never done this before. Like, I should have had somebody train him up on how to do it, or I should have, or something like that. But the individual AARs too are always a lot of times like, hey, I wasn't prepared for this. I need to get, better gaiters or better boots, or my pack setup sucked. I need to figure out how to pack it better. Like I didn't have my comm equipment set up ready to go beforehand. I didn't op check my stuff. Like there's a lot of shit that will be like an individual consideration that guys usually come to the realization, and then the next time they're like, oh yeah, since you know, this time I lost my Bic lighter, and now I have it fucking dummy corded in my underwear.
Yeah, no, true.
But yeah, I think it's getting time to wrap this one up. Is there anything, like, I guess, closing that you'd like to get out or address real quick?
Big one, if I had to say, is just kind of like plugging that hike in again. If you're in Florida and you're willing to make the drive, I don't need, you know, if it's like, it's just going to be a hike. It's going to be a meet and greet type shit. We're just going to go walk a couple miles. It might not even be far, you know. It all obviously depends on whoever's the weakest link that shows up. And that's not like to like tell you don't come if you're like fat. I'm just saying, or like if you're out of shape, I'm saying like don't, if you're in really good shape, don't be surprised if we don't do anything crazy. You know, it's just gonna be like a walk. Like it's just gonna be a fun hike with the boys. Kind of see who's there, who's in the area, who's, you know, and that's really it. Stop buying all the long uppers. Do not rape the market, please. Everyone's that starts building uppers now, you're taking away parts that I could use for my short upper. So stop doing that. No, but in all actuality, yeah, just keep training. You want to know more? You know where to find me.
Yeah, that's good. Something that I'll address real quick is, you know, every year around this time, we see that SHOT Show occurs, and one thing to remember is that since the military contracts are drying up, all these companies are now shifting heavily into the civilian market, and they're going to be heavily looking toward how they can get your money. And just ask yourself, is this something that I actually need, or is there something that I can get that's more suitable for me, that is, you know, or something that I already own that might not be the cool, like, latest and greatest thing, but, you know, make these companies work for you. Like, if they're going to release the dumbest shit and you're just going to go out and buy it, like, they're getting it off easy. They're not working to like figure out what you need. They're figuring out, oh, I can sell this and some idiots are going to buy this because this pouch has a different name, and people don't realize that, like, you don't need a dedicated pouch to carry shit in. I've used fucking saw pouches as GP pouches. Like, it works the same.
Yeah. No, for sure. I agree.
Yeah, but that's about it for me. So thanks for coming on again.
All right.
Spending your time.
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me.
Working through the technical difficulties anytime. You guys know where to find both of us on Instagram, I assume. So.
Yep.